Good evening, everyone. How are you? Excellent. Thank you so much for coming out. Did you like the show, everyone? Excellent. Good, because they're just right there, and it would have been super awkward if you hated it. My name is Jarett Wieselman. I'm a senior editor for BuzzFeed, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all this evening to lead you in a conversation with the female stars of Gracepoint. So, without further ado, first up, Virginia Kull. Next, we have Jacki Weaver. And last but not least, Anna Gunn. Thank you all so much for being here with us this evening.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. So,
I just wanted to test it out.
and I would be remiss if I didn't point out that today is exactly 1 year to the day of the Breaking Bad series finale.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
I didn't even know that.
Obviously, it was a show that was hugely popular with critics and with audiences. Is it strange to be 1 year out from that experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that until you mentioned it, it feels like it was just yesterday, so I didn't realize that time had flown so quickly. But yes, it was sad to say goodbye to it, but the fortunate thing is that we really were a tight-knit, close family, and we're still very much in touch, so we knew it wasn't goodbye forever.
When you come off playing someone like Skylar to such acclaim and such popularity, what is it that you look for in the next project, quote unquote, which you followed it up with a play?
Yes, I just came back from New York, did a wonderful play, Sex with Strangers.
Which I saw, and it was amazing.
My father wasn't thrilled about that title, but what are you going to do? But that was terrific. It was a lot of fun. Very physical play, as you can imagine. But I really was looking for a really complex character with a lot of colors and facets to her, and I responded immediately to Ellie because of that, and many other things, obviously, in the show, in the script, and it all starts with great writing, and that's what it has. It's amazing.
I'm curious, you all sort of have theater experience. You did quite a bit of theater in New York. There's a lot of theater life on this stage. I mean, talk a little bit about flexing those muscles in comparison to television. I mean, I'll ask you, Virginia. I mean, it must be such a different experience to bring newness to a character every single night, 8 shows a week, when you're, in essence, playing the same journey.
Well, sure. It's a very, very different thing than what we had to do on this show. But it's also what I went to college to learn how to do, and I don't know. I feel like I'm still figuring this out. I feel so green, and every day on set, I would just feel like a deer in the headlights.
I think you've got it figured out.
Well, no.
I'd like to say, well figured out.
But there is something when you're on stage, getting to start at the beginning and go in order and get to the end of the play. As an actor, there's something about the arc that you're able to do. It makes sometimes those emotional, scary moments a little easier to get to because you have the linear story to help you. And so that was a big challenge on this, to show up at 8 a.m. and go, okay, your son is dead, go. There was no build-up. I'm actually exaggerating. They were incredibly supportive and gave me as much time as I needed, and I'm very grateful.
Jacki, for you, you've been predominantly doing films for the last few years. Is it nice to get back into an episodic world where you don't know what your character is going to do next week, and you're sort of living a life in that way through this person?
Oh no, I knew what my character was going to do. I knew roughly what was going to happen to her. Oh no, I'd hate to go into something where I didn't know. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's like improv, isn't it? I mean, it can be great fun. But because mostly been a theatre actor. I keep telling people I've done 100 plays, but I think it's only 93. And because I'm used to, having having 6 weeks or 3 weeks rehearsal and being able to work out which choice of 15 ways of doing something, it's a luxury that you don't get quite often in film. I mean, sometimes you do. Sometimes you get a bit of rehearsal in film, but mostly you're thinking on your feet. And sometimes you'll be watching it afterwards and thinking, if only I'd made that other choice, but I didn't get enough time to try out all the choices. But it's a perfectly valid way to work. It's just different. You just gotta be ready for anything, I think. Yeah.
You mentioned sort of looking at your choices. Do you all watch yourselves on film or on screen, or has that just not part of your process?
I sometimes watch myself. I mean, I don't have a problem anymore because the first time I ever acted on screen was, I think, in 1963, and that's a while. And after a while, you honestly do look at it a lot more objectively. You look at that person and you either say, yeah, that was good, the way you said that line, or you'll go, you idiot, what were you thinking? It's a... and I am able to look at myself now mostly and be fairly objective. But no actor's happy with what they've done, I don't think. Everyone's a perfectionist.
You're shaking your head, Anna, yes.
Yeah, I agree. It took me quite a while not to, at screenings, sort of go down.
We still do that.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable. I find that if I let some time go by and then go back and watch it, it helps me be more objective. And then I can sort of be outside of it and actually really watch the story and not be obsessed with the things you're talking about, sort of like, oh, why did you make that? That was not the right choice to make. Should have gone this way. And I think it's true. There's that wonderful quote. There's always a slight sense of dissatisfaction, but that I think is a good thing because it means you're always watching for and learning and growing. And I mean, if you just sat there thinking, well, this is absolutely fabulous, nothing I have to critique about that, that would be not good. So I think I've tried to make it a more positive experience rather than one where I'm cringing and hiding myself down in the chair.
Virginia, you talked about this a minute ago, sort of saying, ready, set, go, your son is dead. And while you were joking, the truth of the matter is in the episode we just watched, I mean, that is intense emotional upheaval for what for us was for 44 minutes, but for you was like a week, if not more, because I can't imagine that in episode 2 she's happy-go-lucky.
You'll just have to wait and see.
And the running, what about the running? She never stopped running. She ran a marathon that Saturday.
Well, I'm curious for a role like this, what the audition process was like for you.
So I had not booked a job in 15 months when I went in for this audition. I had done a play here in LA at the Geffen, actually, last summer, but it had been a show that I had done in New York, so they were just like, hey, come do it again. So it was great and exciting, but I didn't have that sort of victory feel of like, I auditioned for a job and they actually said yes. So I went into this thinking like, well, whoever gets to play this part's going to be really damn lucky, but it's not going to be me, because that had just been the story of my life for a while. So I remember reading the pilot and thinking, oh my God, this is so good. And I remember thinking, like, these words fit in my mouth and I understand them and I want to say them. So I worked harder than I think I had in a while to prep. And I went in, and the casting directors at Fox in New York, where I live, are just so incredibly supportive, and it's a really good room, you know what I mean? So I went in and did the initial read and, thought, well, I think that went well, but I have that feeling a lot, and then you don't hear anything. So I guess, then the agent calls and says, okay, well, they've stuck a pin in you. And I remember I saying, I feel like a pin cushion, because I have heard that so many times, and then it doesn't go any further. So I went in for my manager was like, well, you know, the showrunner lives in New York too. We need to get you in to see him. So Danny Futterman, the best boss in the entire world, came in and had like a work session with me for about 45 minutes or an hour, and he gave me notes, and we talked, and he's a parent, and so it was just, and I'm not, so it was a really kind of invaluable time, and I felt like, wow, that went really well. But again, like, who knows, there are so many factors. And then about a week later, my agent and manager called, and they were like, so they really like you, but we need to come bring you in again and put you on tape to make sure they have all their bases covered, because no one knows who you are, and we don't want any arguments. So I literally went in and I spent about an hour and a half doing a happy version, doing a completely stoic, like, I'm numb version, and then literally snot pouring out of my nose version. And then they got me standing up, sitting down, this way, that way. And then they literally had me just chat with the person running the camera to show that I'm not crazy and I'm an enjoyable person to work with. Literally, they were like, what can we do to make sure you get this job? Like, they were really gunning for me. And I'm so grateful, because like a few weeks later, I knew that I was testing, and they were showing my tape and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then I got the job, and I cried like a crazy person.
I mean, if there was ever, you know, if the expression "it's a marathon, not a sprint" ever applied, it sounds like it applies to network testing, to be honest here.
Yes, yeah. But I understand that, because it's a really good part, and I'm glad that they took their time, and I'm glad that I got it. But even if I hadn't, I hope they would have put that much work into finding the young lady to play it. So.
I would hope that 2 Emmy wins and 2 Oscar nominations and additional Emmy nominations would invalidate the audition process on some level for both of you. But is it something you enjoy, going in for films or for other television shows and actually auditioning in that room?
You first.
If it's something I really love and I really want to, which, you know, most of the time you go in, hopefully, for things that really get you excited and rev your heart up. So, but there's always that part. There's, you know, it's terribly nerve-wracking, and there's always the insecure, chattery mind that says all sorts of things to you when you're just trying to focus on your work. And you know, all those things where they tell you just go in and give it your go and make it your, you know, I think somebody's told me a while ago, just go in and show them how you do it and don't worry about anything else. That was easier said to me than for me to actually apply it. But I think I've gotten to the point where I do actually try to use it as an exercise, and I always feel better about it if I try to do that. If I set an intention, a specific intention or a goal for myself, and then the focus goes there rather than to, you know, the shaking knees and again to the insecurity or to the fear of whatever we're afraid of, not getting the job, you know, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jacki, what about you? I mean, has there been sort of any trick or tip you've learned about auditioning that sort of helps you get through the process better
I
and
don't
successful?
think so. I think every audition is different, really, and it depends who's holding the audition, what the role is, how you're feeling at the time. And I've done some what I thought were really good auditions and didn't get the job. I've done some lousy auditions and got the job, and some of my most exciting stuff I've just been offered it. They haven't even wanted to see me, and I'll say, "Do you want me to read? I don't mind reading." They said, "No, you've got the job." So yeah, it's hard to generalize, I think, with auditions.
Absolutely. You know, once you have the role, all of the roles in this are rather emotionally intense. I'm assuming also for you, Jacki, because we didn't get to see a ton of your character in the first episode, but
I was there for 4 months.
just walking the dog back and over the street, just smoking cigarettes, walking the dog. But I mean, you said before that you knew the plan with her. I would imagine reading the pilot script, you're sort of like, I don't know that I want to do that. But clearly they said, well, here's what's coming. Without sort of revealing, what excited you about this opportunity?
Well, I knew what was coming because I saw Broadchurch. And I was in two minds about watching Broadchurch. And for those of you who haven't seen Broadchurch, which is brilliant, I would strongly advise not to see it until you've seen Gracepoint. Because see it in your own idiom, in your own vernacular. See it as though it happened to Americans. And then have a look at Broadchurch. It's an age-old tradition, It's been going on for years and years across the Atlantic. I mean, one of the greatest comedies ever in America was All in the Family back in the 70s. And that was a direct pinch from Till Death Us Do Part, an English comedy. So it's and the English do it too. It's something that's always gone on, and I remember some of the critics being a bit snarky about it, but it's not something you should get snarky about. The thing about Broadchurch, even though it was brilliant, was only seen by 1% of the American audience. And it's such a good show that Chris Chibnall, the producer, understandably wanted more people to see it in America, and now they will.
Absolutely. Had you seen the original show, or did you sort of the same mind, sort of say, I'm going to ignore it, so I only focus on what's happening here?
No, I really wanted to see it. After I read the script, I immediately asked for the DVDs, and I binge-watched. For me, because when I was in the Matrix Theater Company out here, which I loved, and it gave me a place to work out, and when I wasn't booking jobs regularly, it kept me going. It was a really, again, a really great family. But we did double casting with all the shows, and so it was that odd experience of, it's a very odd thing for an actor to do because you feel naturally sort of possessive of your role, and you want to own it. But it is, I think, a really instructive thing as an actor, if once you can get your ego out of the way a bit, and to, be on stage and do a scene from The Seagull, and then hop off, and then watch the other Nina get up. And it's an odd experience, but if you use it in the proper way, it allows you to pull out and watch the story and how you fit into that story and what your actual role is in the storytelling. And I found it really, once I got past feeling like, oh yeah, that choice was so much better than mine. Oh, but that sort of, all those kinds of things. I really found it to be so helpful. And so I think because of that, I felt like I was going to be okay watching it, Broadchurch without it hanging over me when I started playing the role, and I did. I found it incredibly. And first of all, it is a brilliant show and beautifully acted, and I learned a huge amount about my character and about, again, but our story it's a different creature, and so I think that's also why I felt like it was safe for me to watch it.
What about you, Virginia? What was your sort of approach with that?
Well, I had to watch it because my two audition scenes were from, I believe, episodes 3 and 5, and I was only given the pilot script. So I had no idea what I was talking about. And I was trying to prep for the audition, and I was like, why is she apologizing? What did she do? There are all these secrets that I thought, I'm going to bomb. So I binge watched it as well the night before the audition just to find out what the hell was going on. And I'm so glad I did. Olivia Colman, Jodie Whittaker, everyone in that show is extraordinary, and it was a total treat. And I'm also of the mindset, I remember in high school, my theater teacher made everyone memorize Laura's monologue about the glass menagerie and tiny articles of glass, ornaments mostly, see how it shines, And we literally, it was this weird acting exercise where you had to say you had to mark out the text and say it in the exact intonation as everyone else, and you had to lift your arm at this word, and it was so stupid and bizarre, but watching 20 people do the exact same thing, every single performance was mind-blowingly different. And so I'm kind of the ilk, if Jodie Whittaker makes an amazing choice and has figured out some sort of, amazing thing about this character that I'm too much of a dunce to figure out, I want to know about that. I need help. I want to take everything I can to do as good of a job as I can do, and trust that me as an individual, as a human being, am wholly unique, and even if I copied every single thing she did, it's going to be completely different. So.
I love that. The character, as we've all seen in the first episode, really goes through a horrific experience. For you, what was the key to bringing that to life on screen and not bringing that home with you?
Oh, that's
Or
hard.
did you just live in
She
it
brought
for
it
4
back
months?
to the hotel bar.
Jacki had a Negroni waiting for me in the bar every evening when I got back, so that certainly helped. Michael Pena is a dream TV husband. He was incredibly supportive and playful. I mean, between takes, he would show me funny videos on his iPhone, and then it would be time to roll, and he was right there, ready to go. The crew was really patient and supportive, and I think I had a husband that was completely available to talk to me whenever I needed to, and I had amazing support here, and we had a lot of fun in between, hiking, and I dislocated my finger hiking Mount Finlayson 2 days before we started shooting. I was like, they're gonna fire me. It was horrible. But, all of those things kind of help.
Yeah. I was gonna say, where did you guys film the show?
Vancouver Island, Victoria.
Did it feel, the show takes place in this very small town, and
I should have let you answer that. I'm sorry. Not rude.
It's the only answer I knew.
I'm so sorry. It was so incredibly rude of me. Very sorry, Jacki.
Well,
You can say it anyway.
where did it film?
Victoria.
Oh, amazing. The show takes place in this very small town. With the exception of David Tennant's character, you all know each other. You've all lived here for quite a while. Did filming in this place and living together, as you were saying, sort of, jokingly, if not, go to the bar and Jacki was there, did that that sounded worse than I meant it to. But does that help create a sense of community when you've actually, in some ways, created a community up where you were filming?
I think it always helps on location.
Yeah.
You do become more closely knit just because of the circumstances, and what goes on tour stays on tour. No, that's a joke.
Like a true bartender. Well, I'm curious, the show tackles some really heavy themes. Anna, for you, when you read the script or, this project came to you, what was it about the exploration of this world that excited you?
I think, number one, it was just watching how a small community deals with a tragedy like this and how it can tear people apart. It can bring them together. It does all sorts of things to people, unexpected things. And that part of it, the idea of watching a community go through something like something this tragic, that really did affect all of them. It was a fascinating study to watch all these very complex and rich characters. And then you add to that, of course, the element of not knowing which one of those characters.
It could be any one of us on stage. There's
Mm.
about 25 possibilities of who it could be.
But it was also that I was really drawn into the story, the relationship between Carver and Ellie, and how they have the same imperative. They really have this obvious burning need to solve this, not just because it's their job, but because it's what really drives them, both as individuals, but it drives them in very different ways, and they go about it in completely different ways. And that fascinated me, and I, the research I did for this, I had a good long time to do it, and I found it fascinating. And I was really lucky to talk to one female cop who actually helped solve the J.C. Dugard case, and an FBI agent who was in charge of a task force for crimes against children. And they were both mothers, and they were both married, and I really wanted to understand the element of doing a job that intense and dangerous, and never knowing when you go into work every day frankly, if you're going to come home, and what it felt like to be a mother, and what they had to do at the end of the day to shed that. Like you asked Virginia, sort of how she had to let that go, and it's a similar thing. The wonderful cop, Allie Jacobs, who was just through using her intuition and paying attention, knew something was wrong with Philip Garrido when he came in. And he had been into the police station, I believe, 9 or 10 times. And he came in with those girls, and they always just sort of blew him off. And she happened to be there the one day he came in, and she just looked and listened and paid attention, and she knew something wasn't right. And all she did was check his record. And she called his probation officer and said, I think something's really wrong here. And she knew something was up with the girls. Their answers were too quick. They were sitting too stiffly. She just knew that it didn't fit together. And the probation officer actually said to her, yeah, well, I'm busy, or I can't look into it now, or something. And she said, but those children really looked frightened. And he said, he doesn't have children. And the next day they went to his house and found her and found the kids. So I'm sorry, that was sort of a diversion, but that's one of the things that I love so much about this job, is that you get to climb inside parts of life and parts of humanity, and find out things about people that you would never get the chance to do otherwise. And I was blown away by both women's courage, but also the fact that they both could specifically remember the moment they wanted, the moment that it came to them that they needed to do this. And it was the same, it reminded me of that feeling that I think probably every actor has, where you have that sudden moment where you think, this is what I have to do. It's not what I can, because if you can take it or leave it, then it's probably not a good idea to do it, because it can be quite brutal at times. But they really felt it as a calling, and that was very moving to me. And I think that Carver and Ellie are so similar at the bottom of it all, but at the top of it, they rub up against each other. But I really did enjoy that they had the same goal in mind. Even if they didn't like each other, they had that same desperate desire burning in them. So that was just a fascinating element. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, but it was fascinating. I'm going to sidestep for a second, because, Jacki, I'm curious, working off what Anna said, do you remember when you felt that pull that you had to be an actor for the first time?
I was about 3, I think. I used to just love to pretend to be other people. I used to do accents from the moment I could talk, and it was a foregone conclusion. My father was a lawyer, my brother's a barrister, but they just accepted that was what I was going to do. I started going to children's drama classes and elocution lessons when I was about 5 or 6. I was in a play when I was about 6 or 7. It was a professional adult play, and I was playing a character, and I remember the audience. I remember getting laughs and thinking it was the most fantastic feeling. But yeah, I got goosebumps telling you about that. But yeah, it was always something I was going to do. I don't think there was any question. When I was told I had to go to university and get something behind me, I was going to do social work. But then I got a series, a TV series. This is straight out of high school. So they said you can do the series and go to university next year. And then I never did, because I just kept getting acting jobs. And my dad said it's just as well I didn't do social work, because I'd have brought everybody home, every sad case, every lame duck.
Oh, that's so compassionate. What about you, Virginia? Do you remember when the lure first hit you to act?
Yeah, I think it was a little later for me. I was a big science nerd in high school and wanted to be a doctor. I remember one of my teachers was offering extra credit if we went to go see the school play and brought in our ticket stub. So I thought, well, I have an A, I want an A+. So I went to go see Our Town, and this guy, the guy that played George, was in my choir class, and he was kind of a, just like a typical like high school boy. That's all I'm gonna say. But he was just extraordinary. And when he like fell on his knees in front of the grave and cried, I just thought, oh my God, like I don't recognize him. He's that jackass from my choir class. And so that made me go like, what is this acting thing? So I took an acting class. But it wasn't until I went on a trip right before I graduated from high school to New York City, one of those trips where you see like 20 plays in 5 days. And we went to go see Wit off-Broadway, starring Kathleen Chalfant. And I saw that play, and I said, I want to go to drama school. So that's how it happened.
And then I'll just bring it all the way back around, Anna, since you brought it up. When did you know?
It was when I was 15, and I was taking my first drama class in high school, and I was very lucky to have an incredible teacher, and we were doing a sense memory exercise, and then up until then it had been, doing lots of musicals and just thinking, oh, this is fun, and I knew I enjoyed it, but it wasn't I didn't know quite yet that was the thing I was going to do. And I remember doing the sense memory exercise, and it was like a bolt of lightning. It just honestly hit me that hard, and I knew this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I knew that it wasn't a choice. And I went home and told my parents, and they very nicely did not faint or, roll their eyes or try to dissuade me. I think they knew that they had a strong-willed, stubborn girl on their hands anyway, and it was probably best to not say anything, because they knew I would probably chase it even harder if they said, "Oh, do you think that's a good idea?" So they were very supportive, and there were only a couple of times where I thought, this is just so hard, and when, as you say, when you go through long dry periods, sometimes it's just so hard to keep yourself going. But if it's what you love, then I think it's the thing that drives you on, and I find that to be a wonderful. Sorry, I'm sentimental, but I do. I find that I love that about actors. That's part of what I love, that grit, to go out and give it your best again. And if you don't get the job, you go out and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again because you love it. So
I love that. You had spoken before about all of the preparation work you did, meeting with the detectives and things like that to prepare for this, because what I thought was so interesting and so obvious in the first episode is that gender politics are going to be a huge component of this show, not only in your relationship with David's character, but I think throughout the entire town. What is it for any of you sort of about the themes that are explored through this show that you think are very exciting or that appealed to you when you read that script and found out what the executive producers had planned for it?
You've got to be really careful here, because this is a whodunit.
Right.
And if we start telling you too much about our characters, we're going to give away too much. And this is something I feel strongly about, especially with a mystery.
Yeah.
So we're all mysteries. I mean, normally, if you had just seen a 2-hour movie and asked the same question, I'd rave on about the character and how we got there. But I don't. I think we got a great responsibility to the story here, not to give too much away about our characters, because then you'll get an idea of what the plot is. And the most exciting, we've got 10 eps. We've got 10 eps in Broadchurch only had 8. So there's a little more time to explore the characters, and you're going to get a lot of shocks. You're going to get a lot of surprises.
Well, at least let's speak for the pilot itself, which we've all seen. And I'll ask you, there's a line where your character sort of implies that she can't believe not only has her job been given away, but it's been given away to a man, which she feels is very, cliche. When you read that, what was it about that you found interesting in terms of what that meant for who this character was?
Well, I remember talking to Danny and Anya before we started filming, just to make sure that you want to make sure you're on the same page as your writers and executive producers, and one of the things that was important to Danny was that his feeling about Ellie was that she was somebody to whom nothing had ever come easy, that she really had to fight for everything she got. And he didn't go into specifics about what that meant in terms of her background necessarily, some of it, but he left, a lot of that work for me to just let my imagination run free with that. But I was drawn to that idea of the person who's a fighter, and who believes, and again, I guess it goes back to, I was just really inspired by the people I got to talk to, and there was one, I went on a ride-along with one cop who just honestly believes in the motto to serve and protect, and I just didn't know that there were a lot. It's not that that's not being, I'm not trying to be insulting towards their profession at all, but there was something so tremendously honest and deeply felt about it. And he was somebody who had actually gone through blowing the whistle on his own precinct and then leaving, and then not being able to stay away from, again, what I think was his calling, and he went back to the very station and I thought that was amazing. I thought that takes guts, and so I think there was that sort of grit to her that I admired, but also the duality that she's quite fragile in some ways, and vulnerable and insecure, and is not somebody who thinks she's entitled really to anything. She wanted that, and she fought for it. But I liked the fact that she was willing to also let it go and turn her attention to where it needed to be turned in that first episode. That was interesting to me.
Speaking of things that take guts, you wrote an op-ed for the New York Times talking about sort of the public's perception of quote-unquote strong female characters, specifically Skylar, and the reaction you got to that character from people. I thought it was a really exciting thing to have been written, because I don't think a lot of actors would have put themselves out there like that and really called attention to something that I thought was problematic. If you haven't read it, you really should check out what Anna wrote. And I'm curious, having written that and felt that way and expressed that, what kind of responses did you get from people? Did you get a lot of people coming up to you and say, thank you for writing this?
I did, actually, and that was very gratifying, because I knew it was a risk. My father begged me not to write it. He did. He was just nervous. He was concerned about me putting myself out there like that. And the original piece went into more depth, and was quite a bit more personal about some of the really sort of personal attacks and how that felt, you know, and then the journey of sort of taking myself through it and getting through it and what I learned from it, ultimately. But then I had to edit it down, so which was fine because it was the New York Times. So if they say edit it, you say fine. But I was really happy that I felt like it was I knew it wasn't a full piece. I knew it didn't tie everything up. It's far too complex of a subject, really, to do that in a short piece. But I felt good. I was glad that it started conversations more than anything.
Virginia, when you see another actor, male or female, sort of putting themselves out there in defense of the person that they bring to life, as an actor, what does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, I think as a human being, as a human being with a brain in my head, it blows my mind that people don't understand that Anna Gunn is not Skylar White. She's an actor playing a character. It's not real. But on the other hand, I admire her bravery. I admire the risk. I think that a lot of times, I've experienced this in my own career. When a woman stands up without crying and just firmly speaks, she's considered bitchy or difficult. And I think that's terribly disappointing that it's still going on. And so I get excited to see women standing up and, damn it, like sticking up for themselves. So yeah.
Absolutely. We had talked, Anna had talked about building her character and being able to do ride-alongs and things like that. Obviously, I think there's a different sort of sensitivity there when you're sort of figuring out how to build this woman. For you, what was important to your process in terms of making her three-dimensional for you?
Well, I think the thing that I was most scared about preparing was the fact that I'm not a mother and that I wouldn't be able to bring to the part what needed to be brought. But on the other hand, I wonder if I had been a mother, if I would have been able to do it, or if it would have just been. I know actors who said I couldn't go in for that part because I couldn't live in that headspace for 4 months. Not being a mom, I am an aunt to 7 beautiful, beautiful children, and so I did a lot of, and I'm also a kind of honorary auntie to all of my friends in New York are having babies right now, so I did a lot of baby holding, literally. January was like me rocking children and like smelling their hair and trying. So I did a lot of that, just the sense, the feel of a child and the smell of a child and conversations with 5-year-olds and how amazing those are. I also read a book, and I'm so embarrassed, I'm forgetting the author's name, but it's called An Exact Replica of a Figment of My Imagination, and it's a memoir she wrote about her first pregnancy and stillbirth. And it was so brave and so honest and so heartbreaking. And although it's a very different thing that happened to her than that happens to Beth, it was still, I think, really important for me to read someone's description of their grief and what that looked like, and in kind of surprising ways at times.
Awesome. We took some questions from the audience, and one that I will ask. Actually, Jacki, I'll ask you, if you don't mind. What advice do you have for actors who are just starting to get recurring work in television? In short, what advice do you have to actors to get them, to make them keep bringing you back?
I don't have any advice. What you're asking me personally, what makes me want to keep watching someone on television? Well, it's not technical, is it? There's magic there. I mean, there's magic watching Anna Gunn. There was magic watching Virginia, hysterical tonight. I always tell young actors, know your lines, hit your marks, and be punctual. which isn't as silly as it sounds, but there's something more than that. There's some people are compelling to look at, and I don't think I can advise anyone how to be compelling. I think it's there or it isn't. I do think that people who work hard generally do better, but that's the same with every profession. Sure. I think laziness in an actor isn't a good thing, and sometimes actors get away with being lazy, but most of the good ones work very hard.
Well, following off that, and Virginia, I'll ask you, what is either the best piece of advice you've ever been given about acting, or a piece of advice you tend to impart about acting?
Well, I touched on it earlier, but I remember being told, like, you are interesting. You sitting in a chair on your own, you are wholly unique and special. And so don't try to be Meryl Streep. Don't try to be Anna Gunn. Like, we want to see what you bring to the table. So I thought that was really good advice. And also, I had a casting director tell me my first couple years in New York, I was having a really hard time. And they said, Virginia, we are rooting for you. We want you to get the job. We want you to come into this room and be so extraordinary and blow us out of the water that we get to say, I cast Virginia Kull in her first play. Like, every casting director and producer wants to be the person that discovered Meryl Streep, wants to be the person that discovered Jacki Weaver, wants to be the person that discovered Anna Gunn. So, like, they are rooting for you. They are not wishing you ill. They're not hoping you screw up. They want you to be amazing.
I love that. Lastly, Anna, best piece of advice or the advice you tend to give other actors?
After I made my decision, I had a wonderful acting teacher from the studio who would come out. I'm from Santa Fe, and I was so lucky that she came out in the summer and did 3-week workshops. And I think very early on, she told me, get out of your own way. And she didn't mince words. She was quite direct, obviously. And I didn't understand that for a while. And then I did quite a few years later, and I thought, oh, I keep it's overthinking or overworking. I mean, sometimes you have to just let it come through you and trust that it will do that. And there's obviously certain preparation, and as Jacki says, you got to work hard, but then you have to leave yourself alone and keep yourself open, because if you're still pushing at it really hard, it ain't gonna come, or it ain't gonna be nice to look at.
I love that. Well, on that note, thank you all so much for being with us this evening. Thank you all for coming out. Don't forget to watch Gracepoint October 2nd on Fox, and everyone have a nice evening.